I would be going along and I would hit a wall and I couldn't function.
You could lose her through death, or you can just lose her because she's no longer the person you married.
My life was just slipping from me.
You can become paraplegic, become very spastic. You can die.
We talked about modifying the house so that we could accommodate me in a wheelchair because I was losing it. I was losing it fast.
Welcome to The Incurables. I'm Don Wildman. Few things in life come as more of a shock than being told you have a disabling disease. When that devastating news is compounded by learning modern medicine can't really help, a person's true character is tested. Ann Sawyer was a hard-working mother of three, enjoying a career as both a psychotherapist and a college instructor, when her life began to unravel. Strange weaknesses, loss of sensation, and then crushing fatigue overwhelmed her formerly vibrant existence. When she learned she had one of life's most dreaded diseases, Ann fought back with intellect and spirit to discover on her own an unconventional path to wellness.
I didn't totally share with my family how bad I was, especially the children. I try to protect them.
My mom was feeling like she was on a downward spiral. There were definitely moments of panic.
One day I tried to walk with my husband. I couldn't make it 100 feet.
I think what we expected, that she was going to be in a wheelchair and I was going to be the person pushing the wheelchair.
It was more than just a simple fatigue. She was totally exhausted and could not do very much.
As far as the medical model is concerned, it's a sentence to disability. It's a one-way trip down.
Ann Sawyer grew up in Niagara Falls, New York. A bright and inquisitive child, she always excelled in school.
Her father used to say she has big ideas. She always wants to be doing things, going somewhere or creating something. So she was a woman of big ideas.
After high school, Ann attended the University of Michigan. Graduating with a degree in psychology, Ann spent 2 years doing social work with children. Then she earned her master's degree from the University of Chicago. In Chicago, Ann met Steve Sawyer. The pair married in 1974. For their honeymoon, the couple explored a series of national parks.
I think you could characterize me as just being very active. I just like to be out and about and busy and, very much an energetic person.
Married life brought children, sons Edward and Andrew, and then daughter Kate. Between work, family, teaching college part-time, the demands on Ann's time were high. If she noticed anything odd about her health, Ann ignored it. She was simply too busy to slow down.
I had probably 10 years of strange things happening which I ignored. I didn't have time to be ill. I didn't believe that there was anything wrong with me. After all, I'd always been healthy.
But then, one day, Ann was coming down some steps when she felt her legs suddenly go numb.
It was like I had no legs. And then I just fell.
Ann landed hard on her purse. The fall knocked the breath out of her.
I had to gasp for air. And I just said, I'm fine. And I got in the car and I drove home.
That was a very traumatic experience. She came home, she was extremely upset.
And the next morning I got up for work and I had a huge bruise and I was numb from my shoulders right down to the top of my legs on my left side.
Even with her whole left side lacking any feeling, Ann's first impulse was to push on and act as though everything was fine.
Here's the story we tell ourselves. I told myself that I was numb because I fell on the purse and that somehow it jarred some nerve. So that was my explanation. And I went to work.
After her fall, Ann's health began to rapidly decline.
The numbness in my torso stayed. And about 2 weeks after that, I was lying in bed, about to get up, and my whole left leg went entirely numb.
Despite her growing immobility, no one wanted to face how rapidly Ann was deteriorating.
I think there was some denial for sure. We didn't really want to believe that Ann was having troubles or was going downhill. But yet we had to face reality that she really was.
Climbing up and down stairs was a nightmare because I couldn't feel where my left foot was. It took forever because I'd have to go down so carefully.
She always described it that she couldn't feel her feet. So any kind of walking over uneven ground became a problem.
One morning I woke up with both my arms numb. Terrorized me. I had already lost my feet. What was I going to do without arms?
Ann's condition grew progressively worse. She was overcome by overwhelming fatigue. Her body was starting to shut down.
She was just too tired to work, and my dad started making dinners more often because she was just too tired.
I slept every afternoon. I joked. I had 2 4 to 5 hour days. That was my awake time, and otherwise I was asleep.
One day I had to worry about whether or not to wake my mom up from her nap because there's a tornado warning outside. So should I wake her up so we can go down to the basement and be safe, or should I let her sleep for a little bit longer?
Seeking answers, Ann went to see her longtime personal physician, Jolynn Glanzer.
Ann talked to me about problems with extreme fatigue, pain in her left chest, down into her left leg, problems with numbness and tingling in her foot, and difficulty when she was walking with her foot dragging.
Dr. Glanzer immediately began to suspect Ann's symptoms might have a devastating origin. But without a clear diagnosis, she did not share her fears with Ann.
The main thing that I don't want to do is to cause my patient any undue upset in terms of their illnesses.
To accurately diagnose Ann's illness, more testing was necessary.
I went to a neurologist, and he had a complete MRI done. And though there were lesions, the diagnosis came back disc problems, bulging disc. He didn't believe the bulging disc diagnosis and ordered a spinal tap, which is a fairly dangerous procedure.
The spinal tap was done to look at the protein in the cerebrospinal fluid.
The spinal fluid was sent off to the laboratory for analysis. A week later, Ann, who was still struggling to walk, summoned the courage to phone her neurologist and find out the results of her spinal tap.
I called him to get the diagnosis, and he said the words multiple sclerosis, and I started crying.
With Ann clearly distraught, the neurologist suggested that the diagnosis ought to be confirmed.
He said to me, "You may want to get a second opinion," and that got him off the hook with my tears.
And then, of course, that second opinion became the Mayo Clinic.
A specialist at the Mayo Clinic ran a series of MRIs. The presence of numerous lesions along her spinal cord left no doubt about Ann's fate.
He didn't equivocate at all. He said, "You have MS." And I broke out in tears, of course. It was just devastating.
I guess I was kind of scared too. Even though I wasn't the person with MS, it was a very scary proposition to me too.
I had read enough about MS to know that I I was headed to a very, very dark place.
Usually the people that you identify with multiple sclerosis they're walking with a cane or a walker or then a wheelchair, and pretty soon it just gets progressively worse and worse.
The doctor didn't say too much. He actually, bless his heart, tears came to his eyes. He was a kind man. And his parting words were, "Take care of yourself."
The journey home began in stunned silence as the couple realized that the medical establishment was offering Ann no hope.
The doctor essentially told me that there was nothing more he could do for me. There was nothing he could offer me, which was a favor to me by not offering me false hope.
I think she went from feeling sorry for herself and being defeated and all that to saying, no, I'm not going to give up. This disease is not going to beat me. I know there's a way out, and I'm going to see what I can do to find it.
After the shock, I knew I had to do something. I just couldn't passively accept this fate.
There was now no doubt that Ann Sawyer had multiple sclerosis. While the exact cause of this illness is still unknown, MS acts by destroying the protective sheet that surrounds nerve fibers. Stripped of this insulation, known as myelin, the nervous system essentially short-circuits. Undaunted and prepared to battle this terrifying foe.
Having a name gave me motivation, and in a sense it gave me power. I knew the name of my enemy.
She was to the point where she says, I'm not going to let this get me down. I know there's got to be an answer, or there's some way that we can beat this disease.
Ann gave me the impression that if anyone was going to overcome a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, that she would be the one to do it.
Determined to fight her illness, Ann scoured libraries for everything she could read on multiple sclerosis.
Most of the books about MS are depressing. They're black.
Amid the dire volumes, Ann found a book that gave her hope.
I found a book by a British journalist named Judy Graham, who had MS, entitled Multiple Sclerosis, a self-help guide to its management.
In the book, Judy Graham suggested there might be a link between MS and diet.
The Judy Graham book just grabbed me, it grabbed my imagination, and somehow I knew diet was going to work.
Ann read of largely ignored research by a physician, Roy Swank, which showed MS could be controlled through diet.
Dr. Roy Swank advocated eating less than 15 grams of saturated fat a day and basically giving up red meat, at least for a year. I took it one step forward, and I don't know why, but I decided to cut dairy out entirely.
After only a few weeks on her new diet, Ann experienced significant improvements in her health.
Just cutting out the saturated fat and dairy, the disease process seemed to stop. I wasn't going any further, and I felt hope.
Ann felt she'd unlocked part of the puzzle, but her readings made her wonder if food allergies might be a component of MS.
She said, do you think on the internet we could find some articles or some information about the connection between allergy and multiple sclerosis?
After a long search, Steve Sawyer found a vital article by a scientist named Ashton Embry.
Ashton is a father of 3 boys, and when his eldest got diagnosed with MS, Ashton was totally disgusted that medicine had not anything truly to offer.
Reading Embry's article, Ann learned how certain trigger foods can bring on MS symptoms.
The next day, I stopped eating the 5 main trigger foods: wheat, I already stopped dairy, legumes, eggs, and yeast.
The MS diet is really very countercultural. You know, if you think that you can't eat eggs and you can't eat milk and you can't eat wheat and you can't eat legumes, And really in this culture you say, well, what can I eat?
Ann developed a diet around poultry, fish, a multitude of fresh vegetables, and non-gluten grains such as rice, none of which triggered her MS symptoms, and she started getting better.
She would get excited after the fact, after she started to notice things worked. And then you'd start to see her getting just a little bit more optimistic and a bit more energetic.
I was starting to come alive again.
As Ann's body responded to the diet, she progressively added physical exercise to her routine.
Ann really became a different person from the standpoint of her physical activity.
And as she grew stronger, Ann knew her story needed to be shared.
There's a beautiful legacy in the MS community of those people who advocate the diet. Is anybody who gets better tries to share it. And so outside of conventional medicine, the diet has been being spread and refined and passed on to other people. Just because you want to share the good news, you reclaim your life, you've got a whole new life back, and you want to tell other people about it.
So many people were inspired by Ann's recovery that she put together a copy shop booklet explaining the diet she devised.
Even while I was recovering, I had people calling me and asking me, because my recovery was so remarkable, how do you do it? And it seems like everybody knows somebody with MS. And so I was giving information out.
Ann kept refining her diet and worked at getting the word out. Her strength kept growing, and amazingly, the woman who could once hardly walk was now taking on long and strenuous hikes.
The triumph was in October of 2000 when I hiked down the Grand Canyon with a friend of mine to Inspiration Point, which is 6 miles down, 6 miles back, 3,000 feet elevation change in one day, and I was absolutely triumphant.
After climbing the Grand Canyon, Ann Sawyer expected her triumph would mark an end to her MS journey, but that was not to be. In the fall of 2003, a call came from Spain. It was Ann's daughter, Kate, who was off studying in Barcelona. She said she was having strange symptoms.
Ann heard this and kind of was, oh geez, I know what this is.
Ann immediately flew to Barcelona. She raced through the streets, only to find Kate in peril.
The heartbreak of seeing my daughter holding onto walls so she couldn't stay upright, it absolutely devastated me.
Without delay, Ann put Kate on the MS recovery diet.
We were able to halt it before it could ever get any worse. But if I didn't have that, I would have just continued to get worse, having even more horrifying things happen to me without my control.
Then it really hit me that if I hadn't gone through what I'd gone through, I would be another mother watching powerlessly as my daughter's life was slowly taken away from her.
In a burst of inspiration, Ann began writing a book on MS, knowing what had saved her daughter could help a great many.
That put steel in my determination that I had to get this done. I had to get the word out.
Working with co-author Judy Bachrach, Ann Sawyer's book, The MS Recovery Diet, was finally published in 2007.
We want to get the word spread, and the best way to do it is by having so many people recover, that we have a critical mass, that the establishment, the medical establishment, the public forum can no longer ignore this, and so it becomes common knowledge.
What she found was too much of a positive benefit for her not to tell everyone what happened. I'm very thankful that Ann pursued this option rather than going the traditional way.
Above all, Ann's message is one of hope.
For anyone who's newly diagnosed, I'd say don't worry, it's reversible. And don't worry if you don't get the diet right away. Everything can be reversed. You can regain your health.
Today, Ann is symptom-free and enjoying the best health of her life.
I feel extremely happy that my mom is now to this point where she can do everything that she wants to do and not have anything that's holding her back.
Our life together is so much better now. Again, it's really kind of back to the way it was pre-MS. I guess I have the wife that I married.
My MS journey was so much more than just recovering physically. It was a total growing experience, and strange as it sounds, MS was an incredible gift to me.
The gifts from Ann's incredible journey continue to be passed along and shared with others. To Ann's great joy, her daughter Kate exhibits no symptoms of MS, and today works as a registered nurse.